Welcome to the first meeting of the Port Commission for the Port of Bellingham for 2016. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And our first item on the agenda is our roll call. Commissioner McCauley here. Commissioner Robbins is here, and newly elected Bobby Briscoe is here as well. Here.
Thank you.
Our first item, we've kind of switched our agenda around. The consent agenda will be down on our agenda a little bit, so that our first couple items need to be taken care of before we do the consent agenda. And the first one is to administer the oath of office for Bobby. So if Debbie Adelstein could step forward. Bobby, if you could go down front, please. Okay.
I'll repeat, or I'll read the oath and ask you to repeat after me. Okay. I, and state your name,
I, Bobby Briscoe,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws
and the Constitution and laws
of the state of Washington,
of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
perform and discharge the duties
perform and discharge the duties
of the office of Port of Bellingham,
of the office of Port of Bellingham,
Commissioner District 3,
Commissioner District 3,
in and for the County of Whatcom,
in and for the County of Whatcom,
State of Washington,
State of Washington,
according to the law
according to the law,
and the best of my ability.
to the best of my abilities.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just ask you to, you can use the desk there and go ahead and sign there. There you go, you're official.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is the public comment period. Diane, do we have anyone signed up? List, oh, there it is. Okay, our first person to speak is Kurt, is it Eckmeyer?
Yes.
Eichmeyer. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And welcome, Commissioner Briscoe. As a president of Woodstone and a 20-year plus tenant for the Port of Bellingham, I'd like to welcome you and also invite you to come over and see, maybe even get a pizza. You can never tell what might happen there. So, and also I know that we weren't, wow, what a turnout. I mean, no pressure. Pretty phenomenal to have this kind of turnout. And actually the reason I'm here are two things. First of all, welcome you. The other part of it is, secondly, be to say thank you for, we recently had our lease renewed, and we were out of town when it happened, and wanted to say thank you so very much for your consideration there. And finally, watch, not that I make a lot of meetings, and I don't. I know that's been a point of discussion. I actually tend to, to watch the video replays, and they actually work. But I just wanted to come up and comment and say, I know there's a lot of discussion, there will be a lot of discussion about when is the right time to have these meetings. For us, honestly, as a port tenant, daytime is probably our best time. Reason for that is because we entertain a lot of clients. We have average year 600-800 visitors through to Woodstone. So it's not uncommon for us to have to, or get to, support other local businesses locally here and take them to beautiful places that have Woodstone equipment and show off our equipment and also show them how the things work here in Bellingham. So I know that there's a lot of discussion about this right now, but I wanted to say that if for us And also, I'm guessing for some of the port staff, daytime meetings are awfully nice. I think that maybe a mixture at some point in time, or maybe when important hearings times are need to be had. But just wanted to say as a tenant, that would be sort of our preference. So again, thank you. Again, welcome. And here's to our next 20 plus years of port tenancy. Thank you for all you and your staff do for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Appreciate your comments. Our next person, is Jim Kyle.
Thank you, Commissioner Robbins. I'd like, on behalf of the Working Waterfront Coalition, I'd like to welcome Commissioner-elect, Commissioner now, Bobby Briscoe. And we look forward to working with you, and we thank you for stepping up. I have to say, too, it's a pleasure to send someone directly from the Working Waterfront to the Commission. And again, we look forward to working with you. An unrelated, everything's related here, but a comment on a different topic. I noticed in the Bellingham Herald about a week ago an advertisement for space in the two harbor buildings at Squalicum Harbor, and that space was specified as being available to marine-related companies. And I would like the Commission to know that we very much appreciate your support for staff efforts to maintain a critical mass of maritime companies at the harbor buildings. The next two speakers are going to explain that a bit more, but it's very important to us, and we appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Looking forward to working with the coalition.
Thank you, Jim. Our next speaker is Debbie Granger.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Robbins and McCauley, and thank you and congratulations to our newly inaugurated Commissioner Bobby Briscoe. I guess that wasn't really inauguration, but close to it. My name is Deborah Granger, and I'm speaking to you today as a member of the Working Waterfront Coalition of Whatcom County and as a member of the Whatcom Commercial Fishermen's Association. As a longtime high school career counselor in Bellingham Public Schools, helping thousands of students connect with their next steps after high school, their education, and their career plans, many of whom were keenly interested in working in, on, and around the water. And as a longtime commercial fisherman, we reef net off of Lummi Island. And as someone who has worked in PR, marketing, and fundraising in the maritime and fishing industries throughout the United States, I am pleased to stand and testify today about the importance of the port's evolving policy to aggressively market harbor building vacancies to marine companies. A few reasons, three quick reasons that it's important to develop this policy and to codify it. Such a policy will preserve Bellingham and Whatcom County as a great place to keep a boat, both recreationally and commercially, which they all need the support systems and services nearby. It will also benefit all maritime companies. As Jim said, that critical mass of keeping buildings in close proximity to harbors is the core of the county-wide maritime cluster. And a strong maritime cluster brings greater economic benefits to Whatcom County, which, with the strong multiplier effects of those jobs, it's essential for the continued economic vitality of Whatcom County. So I appreciate your thoughtful review of this policy and study of the policy, and thank you for your time and attention. And now I'd like to introduce Roger or I guess that's your job, but.
It makes it easier for me.
Roger Van Dyken. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie, and welcome, Roger.
Thank you, Commissioner, and it's nice to have a choice as to who's going to introduce me. It's not to say anything that you're not as good looking or anything, but welcome, Commissioner Briscoe. this will probably, and I say this with a little bit of experience in public service, be the most popular that you ever are in your entire tenure. You have yet to cast a vote and offend anyone. So I would just like to echo some of the comments made, and I want to say I'm privileged to be a tenant here now in our 34th year. It's San Juan Sailing, San Juan Yachting, and a member of the community. And I wanted to say also thank you to Jim Jorgensen for his years of service. I learned fisherman's knot from him 38 years ago, and I was reflecting on that and the fact that I was a farm kid who grew up in San Joaquin Valley, a long way away from boats, and the first fishing boats I saw were high school trip to Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. And I still remember my impressions of these boats surrounded by high-rises and fancy apartments and restaurants. At least that was my impression, that this was kind of a nice focal point, kind of an abstract video real-life painting to enhance the restaurant experience. And when I went to see my girl some years later, who happened to be born in Bellingham and lives in Linden, and came here for the first time, hitchhiked up the road, I thought I'd gone to heaven without dying to come into Whatcom County. In fact, some kid in a 55-year-old Shiv took me along Chuckanut Bay just to show me the Chuckanut Road, just to show me what it was like. And to come here to the harbor and to see a real live working waterfront with real fishing boats and an area that supported that. And I became an advocate for the 3 Fs, fishing, farming, and forestry. And it's just so much more. You know, forestry is so much more than logging, than a log show. And agriculture is so much more than a plowing match. And fishing in the marine industry is so much more than just an abstract painting of people walking around commercial fishing boats. So I'm proud and pleased to be part of the commercial marine industry and want to support the efforts of Shirley McFerrin as she is trying to come up with structures that are compatible with the industry that we are in, so we can afford to be part of the working waterfront of the port and not have to compete, which we can't, frankly, with the lawyers and the bankers and engineers and people that have deeper pockets than we have, so that we can have a working waterfront well into our future as commercial marine enterprises. Thank you very kindly, and again, congratulations.
Thank you, Roger. Our next person who signed up is Doug Thomas.
Good afternoon. Doug Thomas, Bellingham Cold Storage, and 25-year resident of Whatcom County. Bellingham Cold Storage has been in business and a port tenant for just over 70 years now. I, like the gentleman from Woodstone, find the daytime meetings a lot more compatible with our schedule. During the season, we're all hands on deck. I'm already asking my staff and people to work well into the evening. Really, we work 24 hours a day at that point. And it's easier for us to be here during daytime hours. A lot of us fly and or travel on weekends and at night so that we can be at work during the day with our folks, with our people. And that's even more so true of many of the tenants, which are subtenants of the port under our lease, about 12 subtenants. They have operations in Sitka, Alaska, or Ketchikan, or Akutan, or wherever they go, and they try to stay here during the week or on weekdays during the daytime, and then take off and fly to their shore plants up in Alaska or wherever their operations might take them. So daytime meetings are better for us. If we need to bring professional service assistants with us, that's often easier to do during the daytime. I'm also a member of the Working Waterfront Coalition, and Jim, I'm sorry, I don't make a lot of the Saturday meetings because I'm often flying or traveling or doing something else that is related to working away from Bellingham. We have about 950 customers, most of which do not reside in the state of Washington. So I'm also in favor of the marine waterfront activities. So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. That's all that's signed up. Is there anyone that didn't sign up that wants to speak? Forgot to sign up? Very good. We lost a good long-time waterfront person in Terry Buzzard over the Christmas holiday. He'd been a person at the Port of Bellingham as a tenant and in our community for a long time, and so keep Terry's family in your thoughts and prayers. Well, the next item, this gets a little confusing. We need to select the officers for the ensuing year, and then if we change chairs. So if it looks weird, it is and does. So with that in mind, it's Diane, could you please read action item 1?
A motion to select commission officers for President, Vice President, and Secretary of the Port of Bellingham Board of Commissioners for the 2016 calendar year.
Maybe we can let those that are leaving leave so we can hear.
Yeah, I'd say if anybody wants to go, now would be a good time because the rest of the meeting's pretty boilerplate stuff. And not super exciting, but anyway.
Yeah.
Except for Rob. Rob has to stay.
So we've heard the action item. Any comments?
Yes, Mr. President. So this year, I think as in past years, we have rotated the seats, which I would like to continue doing again this year. So I would nominate for the, see, I didn't ask you first. Have you've been secretary already?
I have not.
So I would nominate you for secretary, Bobby for vice chair, and then I guess I can't nominate myself for chair, but I guess I'll do it if I have to. But.
My only discussion on this, or my points on this, a year ago, when I was elected president, I thought it was kind of weird that it's just your turn in the barrel, is the term I used, but that we just rotate it through. I think we should consider some other criteria when we select a president. And that is, number one, the desire to be president. If you just rotate it through, that would mean both Commissioner McCauley and myself have been president, so that would mean Bobby should be president. But I can tell you for a first year, first meeting, first year, you want a year under your belt to learn all of the information that's in front of you to be president. And secondly, you should be available to represent the port and the community, and able to attend most community events that are during the day, during the evening, and on weekends. You know, Commissioner Jorgensen didn't want to be president and rotate in because of health issues. So that's also something to consider. And also available to attend all the business meetings that the port representatives need to do at both evening and daytime. And you need to be available, or should be, in my eyes, to attend all the WPPA events. There's at least 2 each year, and those are really important for the president to attend. And you need to have a flexible enough schedule to attend last-minute port issues that may come up. And you need to be very responsive and nimble to meet with the business community at any time. So I think all of those are criteria that we should consider in selecting a president rather than just time to rotate the next person. But I do have no problem with Mike being that if that's the desire of this body. Bobby, do you have any comments?
Yeah, that was a lot of criteria there. Just so you can set your mind at ease, I'm not interested in being president first year out of the box.
Weren't nominated.
I would nominate Mike as president.
To respond to Dan's points, I wouldn't disagree with any of them at all. And the one thing that I appreciated when I first came on with the rotation was that it gave an absolute guarantee that there would be no single person that seemed to be the face of the port or were speaking for the port. So I honestly believe that no matter how many times I've gone out and talked publicly and said, I'm not speaking for the commission, I'm speaking as an individual commissioner, but I'm still the only commissioner there. I think that gives a lot of gravitas to what you're saying when you're there, and I'm not sure people really hear, but I'm not speaking for the commission. So I think having it rotate, I think it's a powerful tool for us to show the public that there is no single voice for the port, that we do all work together, and I like the rotation. It's weird. It is a little weird, but I do like it.
Okay. Any other comments? So with that, we have a suggestion of Commissioner McCauley as president, Commissioner Briscoe as vice president, and myself as secretary. Is that your wishes?
I would probably prefer the secretary position.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, I haven't been secretary yet, and if we're rotating, if that's the reason for.
That's fine.
You have more to do as secretary.
The secretary has more to do than the vice chair.
Okay, I'll let you guys lead me down the road on this one then.
Yeah.
Secretary sits next to Diane for a reason. Or you could hear her on that side too. Yeah.
Candy down here too. Yeah.
Okay, well, with all that in mind, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, cool.
So now we play musical chairs.
Dan, I left you the comics for later. I think you're okay on there. All right, it's been a year since. Oh, you don't want the comics? I literally do have the comics.
I changed.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Thanks, fellas. Hello, everybody. It's been a year since I've been here. We do know who will be here next year unless something dramatic changes. But if I seem a little rusty in my first day out, please bear with me. I do definitely want to welcome Mr. Briscoe, and I should ask you, Commissioner Briscoe, if we call you by your first name, Robert, Bob, Bobby, what's the preference?
Whatever you're comfortable with.
All right, Bobby. Thank you for that. And Dan, thank you for mentioning Terry Buzzard's, the loss of Terry Buzzard. He was a longtime port guy here, the Island Mariner Cruises. I think a lot of folks are going to miss him. So we are now moving on to our second item, which is establishing our date and time and location. You can go ahead with that, please.
A motion to establish the dates, times, and location of the regular Port of Bellingham Commission meetings for the 2016 calendar year.
All right, so in the past, we have had our meetings at 3 o'clock, and here on the first and third Tuesday of each month, I think we have skipped one traditionally in August. Am I getting that? The first meeting in August is traditionally skipped. So if either one of you would entertain anything different today, that would be great. I also would like to make a proposal, but let's start with you, Bobby, if you've got any.
My, I guess, main objective with changing meeting times is not to displace as folks like Doug. I'm not after changing the daytime meetings. I would like to ensure that if we have big things on the table, that the people of Whatcom County are provided the opportunity to get here. So special meetings, I would assume, could be put in place so that the folks can all attend. We can make it possible for people that work the 8 to 5 that would like to get home and get changed, showered, and get here and have a meal to put their concerns forward. That's something that's kind of bothered me in the past. So as far as our regular meetings like we're doing today, stuff that it doesn't have big projects on the table for folks that are invested, that are invested in and they want to speak to that can't get here. That's my concern, is to make sure that the people of Whatcom County can get here when they need to, and that we do that.
Well, I've given this a bit of thought, and I do agree with you that if we do have a public hearing, it should be at night, where we actually have dialogue with the public. We have public comment at these meetings, but we don't have dialogue with the public, but a public hearing we do. So I would agree with what you said. A couple of things I'd like to point out, and I'm in favor of leaving our Port Commission meetings at 3 o'clock for the following reasons. Number one, the Port of Bellingham, by most measures, is the fourth largest port in the state of Washington. Now, there's a couple different ways you measure ports, but for most purposes, it's the fourth largest port of the 70-plus ports. Most large ports conduct their meetings during daytime hours for business purposes, and those would be Seattle, the Port of Seattle, Port of Tacoma, Longview. We have here, for as long as I can remember, they've been during the day. Port of Vancouver, Grays Harbor, Port Angeles, Moses Lake, Port of Skagit. All those meetings are during daytime business hours. And the reason is because they're what I call green and growing ports. They're creating jobs, and they want to cater to the business community and not alienate them. And I think that's, and if it's a Port of Hoodsport that has one dock and a ramp and a park, sure, they meet at night. But the ones that are doing a lot of business, you really want to cater to that business community. The smaller ports with one dock, as I said, tend to meet at night or that don't do much business. We want to work with and embrace the business community. Night meetings will tend to bring out non-port related activists rather than citizens with port concerns. It'll cost more to send the staff home during the day and then have them come back for night meetings. Family time in the evening is really important, whether it's just being home for dinner or going to children's sporting events or school events or helping with homework. Evening family time, I think, is very important for a community to embrace. We spend $10,000 a year to video record our commission meetings so we can be more transparent with the folks that want to watch it. And from my perspective, the written public comment that we get instead of the verbal 3-minute comment, I spend more time with those than I do on the 3-minute comment, because usually I get an email or a phone number and I can call and talk to the people. So from that perspective, even if they emailed in their comment, it's weighed the same way. Business folks from out of town want to meet during the day rather than at night, and I think Doug Thomas related to that as well as Woodstones. We have consultants that come up from Seattle, lawyers, auditors, bonding people, state of Washington department heads, and all those folks that have to spend the night. All that just costs money. And so I would be in favor of keeping the meetings during the day to embrace the business community and not alienate it. But I think a good compromise would be to have all public hearings at night, or any time we have a big, where we know there's going to be a big crowd, to also have it at night. We did that with the Harcourt when we were deciding to have, if we were going to have Harcourt come on board or not. And we had an afternoon meeting, and then we had an evening meeting, and we only had 3 comments at night, and one of them was the same person that commented during the day. So I think I would just as soon keep them at 3 o'clock would be my preference.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
I gave something to Rob. Rob, could you turn that up? Thank you. I think I've got a reasonably decent compromise to start with. This is my handwriting. Some people like it. My wife hates it. I like it. It's got flourishes. So right now we start at 3. We often have closed sessions at 1 or 2 o'clock. Typically they don't last that long. Sometimes a little bit earlier if there's a big issue. So if you can quickly read through here, I don't need to read it to you, but I can explain each one. So what I would propose is we start, a potential closed session would be about an hour later. Roughly speaking, for us, it would be a 2 to 4 p.m. kind of a thing. Senior staff would want to be aware of this as well. Our public meeting, what I would propose, actually begins at 4 p.m. and ends at 5 p.m. And I think if you've looked at, especially Dan, because you've been here long enough now, you looked at our agenda over the last couple of years or even going back 10 years, there are a lot of things like what I've written here, presentations of ongoing work, business transactions that really don't have any public, any reason for the public to weigh in. We get reports, for example, from the auditor or our financial reports and also our consent agenda. Those things could all be done in that 4 to 5 hour. And I think that would also ensure that any meetings that the staff need to have prior to the close of what most people feel is the regular business day, 5 p.m., we could have anybody from the public that needed to come say, Mr. Thomas, you've got somebody that needs to be here, or you need to be present. That would still get you out of here well and within that sort of 9 to 5 regular business hours time frame. I would then propose we take a break for half an hour so that folks who want to grab a bite can do that. The public can arrive. We reconvene at 5:30, start with our public comment right there, and then continue with the regular format for anything that would be relevant for the public. By way of example, today, if you take a look, other than maybe the coronation of Mr. Briscoe here, more people were still here, that would have gotten a laugh. There's not a whole lot on our agenda today that would rise to the level of probably having too many folks want to weigh in. So these things could certainly all be done in that 4 to 5 hour, and then at 5:30 we could probably wrap that up pretty quick. I think that if we also look back, that's 2 hour meetings for us from that 3 to 5. That's pretty typical. If we follow my last year's performance, I don't think we'll be here past 6 at any time. But I certainly wouldn't expect that on most days we'd be here past 6:30, which is a little bit longer than we've done in the past, but certainly not more than about an hour. So I would just propose this as a starting point. And on top of that, I would suggest that if we do follow something like this, that we don't do that for the first couple of months, that we give the director some time to work out something that's reasonable with the staff. Maybe it's this, maybe it's something slightly different, but I'd like just to offer this as a starting point. Comments?
Well, for the reasons I said, I like the simplicity of the 3 o'clock meeting and the way it's gone. It's going to get a little confusing, I think, to the public. Do they come at 4 to 5 or 5 to or 5:30, or which time do they show up? I don't have real heartburn. I'm glad you're proposing 5:30 rather than 7. Mm-hmm. But I still think I would vote against it in favor of 3 o'clock, as long as we have any public hearings in the evening. And I would suggest public hearings be at 7. If the reason we're going to have the public hearing is so people can have a dialogue with us in those public hearings, then I think they should be later after the dinner hour.
Mr. Briscoe.
I think I'd like to hear from Mr. Thomas what he thinks about this.
The challenge is,
We'll give you the mic, Doug.
I think the challenge is, most of us know, a lot of the business projects or whatever we're working on together happen during that business piece that might happen earlier in the afternoon. The challenge is that some of the opinions or the hearing or the comments that come out, we also like to be there for that. So you'd actually cause me to be there even longer than I currently am. And so that's challenging. And I don't want to load the bus by sending all my employees over here at the 5:30 time frame or whatever that is. What's worked in the past works for us and the 1,200 employees that we represent. So taking it later in the evening, you got professional services here, you've got all this, everybody wants to get onto their their evening. I usually try to get on that last flight out of Bellingham oftentimes. And so I'd rather for it to be compressed more so. Do all of your work whenever you want to do your work, but have us come here and get a good compressed time frame before 5 p.m. and have us out of here by 5.
Thank you.
Comments included.
So Doug, that would, that sort of thing that we would be engaging with you would be that 4 to 5 time frame.
Yeah, but you'd also probably want our comments, which happens at 5:30 to...
No, you would be part of that discussion. If we're having a discussion with you here, you'd be part of the discussion during that time, just like it's been traditionally here in the past. If we've got business with a tenant, and it often happens with Shirley's folks, right? So she'll have tenants, and we'll talk to them during that time. So it wouldn't have to wait until 5 for those comments. If we've got business with you, we wouldn't wait till 5:30 to get your comments about it at all. It would happen during the conversation we were having with you at the time.
If I'm here for business, say we're dredging the channel or something like that, and that happens between 3 and 4 now, 3 and 5 now, but I want to stay here so I can comment about the parking lot down at Fairhaven or something else completely unrelated to me, that causes me to stay here the entire time.
Certainly. Well,
it's like waiting through the county council meeting to the very end and experiencing that wonderful thing all the way to the end to be able to comment.
We could certainly have a public comment period at the beginning at 4 p.m. as well. I see no reason why there could not be 2.
Well, it's kind of entrenched more in my mind to keep it at 3 o'clock from the discussion we've had, so.
Let me make my 7th pitch for this. I have asked 6 times in the past. So we meet twice a month. The commitment that we make as public servants, in my mind, is completely disregards time. I take the entire day of Tuesday off on almost every occasion. Sometimes I cannot, and I'll work in the mornings. So my commitment to be here till 10 p.m. is just as serious as if it was just until 6 o'clock. So I don't care about the time. The commitment that some of our professional services would have to make, I don't believe Mr. Schmelick's fee goes up after 5:30, and I do believe we would be within the time frame of the cost of the videographer's time here as well, because he bills us by a block of time, not by the actual hours he's here. Unless we go over the 4-hour period. So I don't see any additional costs there. The senior staff, who I appreciate being here, are all salaried, and they could certainly come in at a different hour of the day twice a month so that their hours would not be extended by any dramatic means at all. And again, they are public servants as we are, so I think their commitment should be maybe even stronger than ours, because they certainly are here 8 hours a day, every day, 200 days a year. And the public hearings issue you raise, I think that's a good point. I know that in the past, especially during the waterfront conversations after the purchase of the waterfront from Georgia Pacific, or that piece of the property on the waterfront, the commission then, and I wasn't here, made commitments to different hours for public hearings. So I don't see that we would have significant issues in front of us that we wouldn't make adjustments for our public hearings. The 4 p.m. time frame that I propose is just 1 hour later. And of course, I think if necessary for folks that would want to make a public comment, that there could certainly be a few minutes at the beginning of that time frame there. But this is, and has been consistently over my 6 years here, the number one issue that comes up more often than any other, which is why I have now asked 7 times for us to move. I think this is a good compromise. It does allow people who would like to come and talk to us the opportunity to do so without taking time off work, and to see those issues in front of us that they might have a concern with, again, without having to take time off work. The 1 hour later start still leaves plenty of time for the business that we would normally be doing with tenants. So this, again, is a starting point, but I feel pretty good about this as being a good opportunity for us. Any further discussion?
Commissioner McCauley, I think you're trying to do the best of both worlds here. It looks to me we're trying to include people at a later time and not exclude people at an earlier time. It's always hard to please everyone with change. I guess I would ask if there's anybody else that would like to shed some light that's sitting out there on their thoughts on this by chance? Anyone? Okay. I said through all my campaign that we needed to make it easier for the working people to also try and get to these without taking time off from their job. So that being said, I believe I would be in favor of trying this.
Dan, any further comments?
No, I've probably said enough.
Okay. Well, I certainly would like to give this a couple of months of attention. So I would suggest that, again, this being a proposed starting point for us, but I don't think I'm going to shift too far from this anyway. But our first meeting in March is March 1st, actually. And if this be where we fall, that will be it. I am very concerned that we don't move to evening meetings. It'll be the seventh time we haven't done it, and I don't want to fail again on that particular issue. But hearing from Commissioner Briscoe that he's in favor of moving meetings to later, that seems to have some favorable movements. If there's any reason that either of you see we should do something like this right away or choose a different date for putting it in practice, please say so. All right, so for now, though, we do need to pick times and dates. I would offer that we keep our date, time, and location of our regular commission meetings for the first 4 meetings of the year, as they are now, to begin at 3 p.m., the first and third Tuesdays here at the Harbor Center. And then by March 1st, which will be our 5th meeting of the year, we will have moved to more of an evening starting point. Yes, that would be a public meeting, would begin at 4 p.m. And like I said, I don't know if it'll look exactly like this when we're all done. We're going to talk about this some more. I definitely, neither Dan nor Bobby have seen this. So I wanted to give them an opportunity to make sure that whatever we end up at, that they're both comfortable with, and that some of the issues that I'm sure Rob's staff is going to bring up can also be accommodated in here, and that if this is where we fall, that it is reasonable for all concerned.
Just for clarification, so if the meeting goes, you have the record for the shortest meeting, which was a half hour, which is, so if we have a short meeting from 4 to 4:30, then we take a break till 5:30?
Yes, sir, that would happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the closed session would be from 2 to 4, as I understand.
Well, whatever, but sometime before 4, but 2 to 4 is just.
As we normally schedule.
Yes, so literally just starting an hour later, but that extra half hour pushes that dinner break, but also the arrival period for the public. That recess there, that would push us out an actual hour and a half later.
But if we need a 3-hour closed session, that's still available.
I don't see why not. We've started it before. But, okay.
I'd rather vote down the 3 o'clock meeting, and then I'd like to make a motion for the 3 o'clock and then vote it down if that's the case. And then vote on the next one.
What do you mean?
Well, I'd like to make the motion that we keep it at 3.
Okay.
And have a vote on it.
Oh, I see your point there. Okay, the motion is on the floor that we keep our meetings at 3 o'clock for the entire year, first and third Tuesdays.
With the exception of the public hearings.
All right, any conversation? Mr. Briscoe?
No.
All right, I too have no comments. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No.
No.
Okay, so we are officially on record as shooting that one down.
Thank you.
The proposal to have our first four, that might be the first time that's happened to him. The proposal to have our first 4 meetings at 3 p.m., first and third Tuesdays here at the Harbor Center, with our 5th meeting shifted to more of an evening formats. Any discussion?
No.
No. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Are you opposed?
Yes.
I better say no. All right. It's
All
two-
opposed. I'm opposed. Aye. No, I'm not opposed.
All right, so 2 in favor and 1 opposed to that proposal. So for the first 4 meetings, for those paying attention, we will be here at the same date, time, location for 4 meetings. Our 5th meeting will be moved to sometime in the evening. There will be public notices about that. What you see up here on the board may not be where we end up, but stay tuned, and we will make sure that folks know well in advance what that's going to look like. And moving to our 3rd action item, Diane?
A motion for approval to appoint the following Port of Bellingham commissioners to serve as representatives, trustees, or board members for the following organizations or committees during 2016. Whatcom Council of Governments, or the COG, the Washington Public Ports Association, or the WPPA, the Whatcom County Economic Development Investment Program, or the EDI, and Western Crossing.
Thanks, Diane. So I talked with Dan, Commissioner Robbins, shortly before we started today, and so we're going to set Mr. Briscoe up with this. So get ready, sir. So the Whatcom Council of Governments in the past, Mr. Jorgensen has done that. This past year, our Public Port Association trustee was myself. The EDI committee representative was myself, and the Western Crossing representative was Commissioner Robbins. So proposal this year would be for me to take over at the Council of Governments for Mr. Jorgensen. Our WPPA rep would be Mr. Robbins. Our EDI rep would be Mr. Briscoe. Our Western Crossing rep would be Mr. Robbins. Any discussion, gentlemen?
I agree with that. I enjoy being on the Western Crossing, and I'm doing a lot more with WPPA, so I'd be fine with that recommendation.
Mr. Briscoe?
You sure you can't do it all?
No.
I'd be fine with that.
All right, the EDI board doesn't meet super often during the year, and there's plenty of time and a lot of background materials, so it's not an overly taxing commitment for your first year, and there's lots of folks there to help you get up to speed, so I think it'd be a good start for you there. I've also been a proxy for Bill Bryant, who's a former commissioner for this Port of Seattle. He's since resigned his position, or he's moved on. He's running for governor. But he was the Puget Sound Partnership representative for the Washington Public Port Association. And if the WPPA will keep me, then I'd like to step up and take over for him with the Puget Sound Partnership. Is there anything? Let's see. Jim was doing something else, wasn't he? The small cities.
No, there's only these 4. The others are just committees that we can attend. If
He's
we so.
attended the small committees. Are you interested?
I attend those always.
All right, so if I could make a request, so it hasn't happened too often in the past, and I've also failed. If you could share with us the meeting that occurs after those meetings with what occurred, and any thoughts that you had or shared.
Are you getting
there.
notes from those meetings now?
I don't know. I know those things are
We have
typically
staff
available
there,
online.
so we can take notes and
Okay.
circulate those to you to take a little bit of burden off Commissioner Robbins in case he needs to miss a meeting or he doesn't want to take notes. I'll make sure staff does notes and we'll circulate
All
those.
right, super cool. All right.
And-
I've never received the minutes of those meetings.
Oh, really?
No.
we-
Nor did Commissioner Jorgensen.
Okay, we'll make sure
Because
you're.
we're guests.
Todd
We're
here?
not on the.
Not representatives.
We're not
Yeah.
on that committee. We're guests
Okay.
there.
But I do enjoy the fact that we do have commission representation there, so I appreciate that. If you're still going, that'd be really nice. And then, so we don't have an official representative at the MAC. I know that Mr. Jorgensen would typically go to that. I don't know do you have time, Mr. Briscoe, if you'd like to sort of follow through with those things? I typically don't go to those committee meetings.
Yes,
All right. I mean, you don't have to, it's just.
I attend
I'll do my best to attend the MAC
Super.
meetings.
And then I think the only other committee we actually have is the airport. No, we have 2, don't we? The airport advisory and then the other airport advisory. All right.
Marina Advisory and the Technical
Yeah.
Advisory at the airport, and then we have the Community Airport. So
Yep.
those 3 groups, and we've always left those open to any commissioner at any time.
Super cool. All right. All right. So we do have on the floor then the Council of Governments with me as a representative. The WPPA representative is Mr. Robbins. The EDI representative is Mr. Briscoe. Western Crossing would be Mr. Robbins. All right, any further discussion?
A couple things. We need an alternate to each of those. So we need to assign those as well, I think. Is that correct? And,
This is where
but
Mr.
Mike,
Briscoe
I'm
can do them all.
I'm confused on the WPPA Bennett, Bill Bennett.
Brian.
Brian,
Yeah.
how is that?
Well, it's not something that we have a seat on. It's just a representative position through the WPPA. So
So does a WPPA elect you or appoint you?
appointed, yeah.
Yeah.
Commissioner, for the commissioner's benefit, there's a number of WPPA committees that commissioners or staff have historically sat on. Right now, the only commissioner position, I believe, is Macaulay's with the Puget Sound Partnership. But Brian Gowan from our environmental department is heavily involved in the environmental committee. I was previously involved in the finance committee. I think Tamara is occasionally now. But yeah, the WPPA committees are appointed not by this body, but by the WPPA itself.
And I would offer that if we have opportunities as commissioners to get into any of those positions with the WPPA, that we would take them, because it does definitely give us a bit of an opportunity where we otherwise may not have one. But again, those aren't official.
I think it's important when we have, if we're an alternate to one of these 4 committees, that if we can't make it as the person appointed, that we get a hold of the other commissioner, the alternate, to let him know he needs to go to those.
So alternate, any volunteers for the Council of Governments? Can't be me.
Has to be me if it can't be me.
Well, I don't mind being the alternate on the WPPA or the EDI.
Well, you're the rep on the WPPA.
Oh, excuse me. Okay,
Yeah.
so,
I would certainly be the alternate there if nobody minds.
okay.
Okay.
So let's see, I can't, if I'm, then I'll take either, let's see, who's COG? That's Bobby?
That would be me.
So I will, I don't mind being the alternate there.
Okay. That leaves the EDI, and currently we have nominated Mr. Briscoe, so would you like the alternate position on that one?
For both of them?
The EDI bit committee.
Well, then will you be Western Crossing?
Sure, yeah.
Sure,
Okay. All right.
that works.
So the alternate for the Council of Governments would be Commissioner Robbins, the WPPA would be myself, the EDI would be Commissioner Robbins, and Western Crossing again would be me.
Wait a minute, I thought I was the EDI.
Oh, you are the main guy at EDI.
Okay, so
Yeah.
he's the alternate.
Yeah,
If I might just read them before you vote?
sure, thank you.
Okay. Approval of a motion to appoint the following Port of Bellingham Commissioners to serve as representatives, trustees, or board members for the following organizations or committees during 2016. For the COG, we have Commissioner Macaulay serving as the primary, Commissioner Robbins as the alternate. For the WPPA, we have Robbins as the trustee, Commissioner Robbins as the trustee, and as alternate, Commissioner Macaulay. For the EDI, we have Commissioner Briscoe serving as primary, and Commissioner Robbins serving as secondary. And for Western Crossing, Commissioner Robbins, the primary, Commissioner Macaulay as secondary.
All right, any issue with those, gentlemen? All right. Hearing no further.
Just a second here, Bobby is secondary on which one? Any of them?
No,
Why, instead of me being on 2 of them, why don't we let Bobby be on one of them?
certainly. Which one would you like to give up? You are currently the COG alternate and the EDI alternate.
So
So it would probably have to be the COG alternate then.
the COG, yeah, let Bobby be the COG alternate, if that's okay, Bobby.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Diane, make that change? Got that. All right. Any further discussion? All right. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
All right. These first meetings always feel really clunky to me. Yeah, they are. All right. I'm surprised the folks that have stayed. All right, what's item number 4 in our action items, Diane, please?
A motion to approve Resolution Number 1106R, delegating certain administrative powers and duties to the Executive Director.
I think, Neil, you got something, and I do. I got to say before you start, this is the one I hate the most, because it's like we're giving it to Rob. Too much to Rob. All right, go ahead, Neil. Thank you.
Commission, and special welcome to Commissioner Briscoe. Back in 2009, the Commission approved a resolution that allowed the Executive Director to sign off on interlocal agreements, basically designed for training of our first response community. It gave us two things: one, liability protection, and two, it gave us the opportunity to better manage the requests that we get for our unique properties in a more structured way. And so, based upon that resolution, we went ahead and we brought in most of the emergency response organizations throughout that have an impact on our port properties. Last year, came to you in June with a request from Homeland Security, Immigration, Customs Enforcement, and Homeland Security Investigations. And they had wanted to also get into an interlocal agreement with us. It's a different template because it's a federal organization. And because of that, we went ahead and we brought that to the Commission, and the Commission approved that. Within days, I got a second request. And one of the things that we noted was that in the original resolution, once you amended your delegation of authority, that resolution did not carry forward. It couldn't carry forward from year to year to year. And so when this second Homeland Security request came in, we talked about what's the best way to be able to deal with this without having to come to the Commission for every single request. And there was a simple solution that we came up with in amending and actually striking one small line on the Delegation of Authority Resolution 1106R. And it's that proposal that's here before you today.
If I may, just for the benefit of the new commissioner and anyone watching or in the audience that isn't aware, the 1106 is bigger than what Neil has just addressed here. What Neil is addressing is the only change to the resolution 1106. The 1106 is actually the delegation of powers from the commission to me for doing things such as signing leases, day-to-day purchases, hiring staff, all those day-to-day functions of the port. So all of those are staying the same from last year with the exception of the one item that Neil just pointed out.
All right. Any discussion, gentlemen?
I have none.
Mr. Briscoe? None? All right. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. Passes. Thank you, Neil. Diane, action item number 5, please.
Approval of a motion adopting the Port of Bellingham's rental revenue standards for 2016.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Terry Leahy, Real Estate Representative. Every year, the Port's rental revenue standards are updated based upon the market conditions. These standards allow for administrative approval of leases that are 5 years or less. Comparison of this year's surveys with last year's results show a slight increase in rates for Class A and B retail space and a slight decrease in Class A office spaces. Even though the Port's rate range is within the general parameters of the market, two changes are being proposed. The first is to increase the Harbour Centre's high rate of range from $18.05 a square foot per year to $18.62 a square foot per year. This is still within our Class B rate structure. The second change is we're proposing adding a section that would benefit the marine trades businesses, and specifically the section is continue to offer attractive lease rates to commercial marine businesses in order to maximize marine trades occupancies at the port facilities, port-owned harbor buildings and properties. Continue to offer attractive lease rates, especially as they relate to in-water marine infrastructure capital costs where marine trades businesses must rely on water access. So this is the one section we're proposing to add to our rental revenue standards going forward. We certainly recommend approval of the 2016 standards with these two proposed changes.
All right, thank you, Terry. Any discussion, Mr. Briscoe?
No.
All right. Mr. Robbins?
I have none.
So this is that time of the year where I think if there were more real estate folks in the audience, we would probably get a lot more attention to what this is all about. And ensuring that the port is not competing with the private sector is always a very, very critical and a difficult thing to do. And I think the port staff do a pretty dang good job of doing that. I'm sure that there's room for criticism and there's probably room for more kudos than you're actually getting. I'd like to say thank you. We had quite a discussion last December, I think, on that additional item. So I appreciate Shirley and everybody that worked to get that in there, and with the Working Waterfront Coalition to sort of put into real words some of the intent that they've been hearing but hadn't really been reading. So I appreciate that, and thanks for bringing it to our attention, Terry. I know that, especially with the new commissioner, we'll probably be having more discussions about this next year than we've had this year. But I just want to say thanks for paying attention, knowing that we do compete with the private sector, and ensuring that we're being very fair and open and honest about that when it happens. So appreciate that. Any further discussion, gentlemen?
When you say this year and next year, you're referring to 15 and 16, not 16 and 17, is that correct?
Sure. Now I'm confused. January. Yes, whatever he said. That would be fine. Yeah.
Comment.
All right. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Terry. We now move to our consent agenda, and I do believe Diane has a little something for us.
Commissioners, the staff has requested that item J in the consent agenda be pulled and addressed separately following your vote on this.
All right, thank you for that. Let's go ahead and put J out after our discussion about the consent agenda. Will be the first item before recessing to our IDC board meeting.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
So for our new commissioner, usually we don't have any deep discussions about this, and I think if you noticed, we just pulled J for a little more discussion. But if there are any simple questions for either of you, or from either of you now on the consent agenda, Dan?
No, I have really nothing. Nice to see that the law firm didn't raise our rates.
I can fix it if you have.
It's been a while since you raised your rates with us. I think we went down. Didn't we go down?
No, we raised our rates 7 years ago, and then last year. But last year, since we raised them last year, we're holding them steady.
Well, that's it. See, you're confusing me there.
Only a lawyer could say we haven't raised our rates in 7 years.
We raised
Except
we raised them last year.
and 7 years ago.
I like that. Let's see. I don't believe I have anything, Mr. Briscoe. Anything you want a quick question about?
Well, I had a question. It was on the insurance coverage rates. I think it was for Tamara I can't remember. I had it in front of me here. But there was no comparison, changes on P&I and things like that for 2016. Things were bumped up, and there was no comparison for 2015 of how that was going to affect the tenants and so on and so forth, their insurance levels.
Is that item G you're referring to?
I think.
This one right here.
Bob Jenkins is here, and he can speak to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Bob, you have a quick one, or do you think?
I think it's fairly straightforward. My name is Bob Jenkins.
Okay.
I'm a risk administrator. Essentially, we're trying to, this is to afford the port more protection if there were to be two events that happened in a year, and the requirements before was $1 million coverage and $1 million aggregate. So if something happened, $1 million coverage per incident, but there were two of them, our coverage would stop at $1 million. That's all we'd be able. What this does is allow us to have coverage up to $2 million instead of the $1 million if in the case of multiple incidents.
Okay, thank you.
Playing it all right. Yeah, all right, okay. I think that there was a curiosity about, does this require individual tenants to purchase a more expensive insurance policy, and when would that happen?
Excuse me. In most cases, that coverage is already in place. There are some individual tenants that might have the $1 million aggregate, but in most cases, it's $2 million aggregate. So in those cases, if it's $1 million, it might be a little more expensive.
Okay, all right. And typically, maybe, Rob, you might weigh in on this also. With these types of insurance policies, I know you're not experts, the additional costs, would they be in the few dollars or in the hundreds of dollars? Or?
Yeah, the first $1 million is going to be the majority of the cost. And because it's on a single occurrence right now, our concern was there would be no coverage for a second event, as Bob said. That second $1 million of coverage will not cost, it'll be a fraction of what the first $1 million is. That's just how premiums work, because they're worried about that first accident, not subsequent ones. Okay. Having 2 in a year would be obviously a low probability.
Okay, all right, great. Anything further, Mr. Briscoe?
I did get Mr. Briscoe's point, and I think next year when we bring this forward, maybe we'll survey a couple tenants as to what they're paying and what any change effect will be to them, and then we can present that information.
Yeah, that was my concern, is what the cost was going to be to the tenants and increased coverage.
All right, great. Anything further, Mr. Robbins? All right, so with the exception of item J, no, is it J? I'm sorry, that's what we took out.
Yes.
It's J. With the exception of item J, all in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
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 All right, and let's have that item J now. Thank you, Diane. We'll call it item 1. Action item, no, it would be, that's executive. That'd just be item, I think item 1.
Approval of a motion authorizing the executive director to purchase 3 shuttle buses from SP Plus Corporation upon the end of their lease, and to extend the parking management agreement with SP Plus for management of revenue parking lots at Bellingham International Airport on a month-to-month basis from April 1, 2016 to June 30th, 2016, to be coterminous with the end of the SP Plus shuttle bus leases.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Sunil Harman, Director of Aviation. Diane graciously put in front of you red line versions indicating the changes to the action item. This is a concurrent item in that we're asking authorization for the executive to do 2 things. One is to extend the agreement for a period of 3 months with S&P Parking, and the second is to purchase the 3 buses that are currently being operated by that contractor. The changes that prompted this item from being pulled is because when we initially did the negotiations with the contractor for our budgeting purposes, we didn't anticipate that June was going to be a 3 pay period month. And as a result, the dollar amounts changed with an increase of $28,656 for the agreement. The dollar amounts for the 3 bus purchases did not change. They remain at $32,000.
Any discussion, gentlemen?
What are we doing with the old buses?
We're purchasing the 3 buses with this proposal, and the buses have a minimum life cycle of 200,000 miles in 7 years. But with proper maintenance, they can run 12, 14 years. And to acquire those buses again through a new contract, I looked at the Volpe Institute, which is a Department of Transportation think tank, and the models that they do. And we use specialized buses with luggage racks and ADA. They're about $135,000 a piece. So if we acquire these 3 for $32,000 and budget about $30,000 worth of repairs and on an annual basis, we could run these buses at a significantly lower cost. So it's a good business decision to acquire the 3 buses. Now, if we don't acquire these buses, we did a financial analysis. What we would owe on the lease for mileage overages would be about $40,000. So we're actually paying less by acquiring them than not acquiring them.
I guess, who does the maintenance on these buses? I mean, who takes care of it?
It's contracted out presently. They're out of warranty. So, and we would assume that the new parking management company that we advertise and select, it may be the same one, will then enter into a management agreement for the maintenance of the 3 buses.
So the only thing that's changing here is that the port owns the buses, but they're operated and maintained by a third party.
They have been leased and operated by SP Parking. We would then own the buses, and they would be operated by the contractor.
All right, great.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that we would do some analysis and work with our maintenance shop. They may very well end up doing, now that we own the buses, they may end up doing the maintenance work in-house. We'll talk to them about that.
All right.
And why are we extending it only 3 months? Why isn't it a?
This contract was initially a 3-year contract. It was issued in 2011. We extended it for 2 years in 2014. This gives us time to go out RFP for a new contract. Typically, we don't want to renew it beyond the allowable contract term, 5 years, 3 plus 2.
Very good. Thank you.
So this is a kind of crunching, not of just numbers, but effort that I think that Rob's been pushing for at the airport, and I appreciate this effort. It doesn't seem like a large amount of money because we're talking about tens of thousands in a budget in the millions, but every little drop adds up. I think this is smart management, and I appreciate it. So thank you for the effort here.
Thank you.
All right. So any further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All righty, now we will be recessing because we are going to get clunky again, and so we're going to open our Industrial Development Corporation board. So we will recess our regularly scheduled program. By doing that, we are opening our IDC board meeting as of now, and our first item of business is selecting our officers for the calendar year.
So for the benefit of the new commissioner and folks that don't know, I've asked Frank to give us a brief description of what the IDC is.
Thank you very much.
So each year, the Congress of the United States appropriates an amount of money that is available for tax-exempt financing for certain activities, including student housing, industrial development, and installation of some environmental equipment on industry. That's then broken down to the states. And we are an industrial development corporation in the state of Washington. So if there's a qualifying business in our area, they can come to the port and ask you to pass what's called an inducement resolution, which is merely the starting point, and they start to capture their costs. Then it's possible for a bond to be issued by the Industrial Development Corporation, which is solely payable from the revenue of the project. However, the bond on its face says Industrial Development Corporation of the Port of Bellingham. The port is never liable to pay on the bonds, but it does have the port's name, and so the port has adopted standards under which it would issue these bonds. And I must tell you, practically speaking, these bonds are not issued in the open market. They typically are issued by the Bank of New York to industrial bond investors at a very high level, and we've done these in the past, for example, for British Petroleum and other corporations that want to take advantage of the differential between the market interest rate and tax-free financing. It hasn't been much activity in recent years because the interest rate's so low, but as the differential moves, you may see more activity in industrial development. There's a certain capacity in the state of Washington. The state can only use X amount of capacity allocated each year by Congress. And we receive a fee for doing this work, and that can be used for job training and for some other functions in our port district. And in fact, it has been used to do some marketing and development for the port.
Thanks for that. So since we're on that topic, Dodd, would you have a moment to sort of explain a couple of the uses of the IDC a little deeper than Frank has done? Thank you. So I know we've done some small projects, and then the funds that we receive for the management fee go to some projects as well.
Yes, thank you. Dodd Snodgrass, Economic Development Specialist for the port. So as Frank explained, we've issued manufacturing bonds for companies like Woodstone, for Hemplers and BP. There's a fee of 0.1%. that's collected on the outstanding balance of those bonds. And, excuse me, those are maintained in an account, and we have declared that surplus over the last few years and put it into Port's economic development budget and use it for contracts for services. We have not issued any IRBs as of the last few years, mainly because of the market conditions, because the interest rate differential is not advantageous enough. But it has provided a cash flow through that service fee that we can use for economic development purposes.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. And so we are now going to be selecting our officers.
So historically, the officers of the IDC have mirrored the Port Commission. That's what you've adopted, with the addition of one position, which is a treasurer position. The IDC charter requires a treasurer, and that has been our Director of Finance, Tamara Sobczak.
Okay, so the proposal would be myself and the chair, Mr. Robbins as our secretary, and Mr. Briscoe as our vice chair, with our treasurer. I don't remember that. All right, our treasurer is Ms. Sobczak. Is there any discussion about these?
So I'm sorry, I'd like to read the motion.
Oh,
okay.
My apologies, Diane.
So, a motion to select the officers for the Industrial Development Corporation, or the IDC Board of Directors, for the 2016 calendar year.
All right, my Robert's Rules coach would beat me right now. How about some discussion now, gentlemen?
I agree with the assignments as suggested.
I agree. All right, hearing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, hearing no opposed, we're moving forward there. We're going to establish our date, time, and location now. Diane?
A motion to establish the date, time, and location of the IDC meetings for the 2016 calendar year.
Historically, this has been on an as-needed basis. So we have something comes forward. We have at least one meeting to approve the budget. Actually, we have two, because we have one to approve the budget, and then we have one to approve the notes from that meeting that approved the budget. But other meetings have been as needed, and we established those two I just mentioned as we just announced them ahead of time.
All right, and those would occur during the other regular meetings that we established during the year for our normal business. Any discussion, gentlemen? No?
No.
All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we have done that. Thank you very much. And now some minutes. Diane?
A motion to approve the November 17, 2015 minutes of the Industrial Development Corporation board meeting.
All right, any discussion on this, gentlemen?
I have none.
I have none.
All right, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we will now close our IDC meeting with that action, and we will reconvene our public meeting. Here we go. We are back. We have no additional items on our agenda. However, we would be doing some new business. Let's start with Mr. Robbins. Any new business?
I've got a little bit of new business. Basically, just a heads up and a courtesy to my fellow commissioners. When I ran for Port Commissioner, I had no hidden agenda. I didn't have a boat in the harbor or an airplane at the airport or didn't own a fishing boat. I just wanted to make sure that I did my best for our community. But in assuming the position, I found that the campaign finance for Port Commission races is really out of whack. And so I'm going to take on a bit of a project for the next year, and I thought I'd make you gentlemen aware of it as a courtesy. Right now, there are no limits to how much any candidate can raise for a Port Commission race. There is for county offices and city offices and legislatures, but there's no cap on how much an individual can raise from whoever, and it doesn't seem right to me. I'm working with the WPPA and through our legislators to make a change to have it somewhere capped in the neighborhood of $500 per entity. Now, there is an exception. There are caps for port races in Seattle and Tacoma. So there's been a precedent set where Seattle and Tacoma have caps. This is a bipartisan issue. It needs to go through the legislators to make a change. So I'm working with both sides of the aisle to try to have that happen. All 70 plus port commissioner races, as I said, have no limits, with the exception of the 2. In-kind contributions are treated as cash. Campaigns are bought and paid for in some cases through individuals or PACs, and it just doesn't set right with me. Elections are no longer, in some cases, by the people and for the people. In the last election cycle, a commissioner in the Port of Vancouver was elected with a $100,000 contribution from one entity. And lo and behold, he got elected. And for a nonpartisan Port Commission race that pays $750 a month or $9,000 a year, it's ridiculous to spend $137,000, in my opinion, to get elected. The playing field needs to be leveled. Most Port Commission races in the state, believe it or not, are under the $5,000 total contribution that are raised, so they file short form. Almost all of them, the majority of them. An individual campaign contribution of $500 or less for a like-minded candidate to help him get elected, to me, seems reasonable. $1,000 contribution to a candidate, to me, is kind of questionable. $3,000, you're trying to influence the race. $5,000, you're definitely trying to influence and buy access. $7,000, you're trying to buy control, influence, and access. $10,000, you're trying to buy power and all the others. And $100,000, it's just monumentous and outrageous, in my opinion. So I'm going to work through WPPA and with our legislators to see if we can copy what Seattle's done at a lower rate for a cap. Their cap was $900. And it gets confusing because they talk elections and election cycles. Elections, sometimes it's $500 for a primary and another $500 for the general. And if it's capped at $500, then that would be $1,000. I'm suggesting that the election cycle be $500. You can still get $1,000 from a husband and a wife, but that would be for every entity out there. And I think that would be a more level playing field. And I just wanted to make my fellow commissioners aware of something I'm going to go after.
Well, you know, I would have supported that wholeheartedly. In my last campaign, I was outspent 2-1, so that would have definitely helped me win.
I saw you were. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair to buy elections.
Sorry about the sarcasm. I'm just kidding. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, cool. Mr. Briscoe.
I think I'm going to reserve my stuff, seeing as how I'm newly sworn in to the next meeting.
Okay. I've got two quick items. In December, there was a conversation that we had. Mr. Hergesheimer gave us a heads up on the current waterway cleanup, where we are in that project, and then we had a quick discussion about the travel lift pier. And we're working, I think we approved the expenditure of some money on a design. Mr. Briscoe has recently questioned our movement forward on that. So if you could quickly tell us where we are in the design and if we've actually spent any money yet. Because I definitely want to give Mr. Briscoe an opportunity to weigh in now that he's here.
Thanks, Commissioner Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental Programs. I think Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities, who oversees John Hergesheimer, is probably the better point of contact on this one. But I'd be happy to get you a little bit more information. If you have some specific questions, maybe get back to you. I don't know specifically where the contract is. It was approved to proceed with that design. I know we've been taking input on how that is the more detailed design is formulated, and we'd be happy to brief the commission maybe individually or work with Rob on that and answer specific questions. But it is moving forward, and it is on a fairly rapid time frame in order to fit with the current permit window and time frame. I know that is moving fairly quickly.
Okay, so maybe we'll get some information to Commissioner Briscoe on that as soon as we can.
Yeah, if you have specific questions, you can feel free to email me or work with Rob, and we can and get those questions answered for you.
Thanks, appreciate it, Brian. Thank you. And then the other item I've got is we recently offered some space to Decorum and another company. I'm drawing a blank on this one regarding our shipping terminal and moving some wood products. Dan, do you recall the name of the other company?
The company's called BFM.
BFM, thank you very much. So there's some folks in the community that are concerned about this type of biomass leaving our shores and going to Asian marketplaces to be burned for energy production. And I've been approached by them to have a discussion about it, and I'm not entirely certain what these two companies are interested in doing at this point. So if we could gather some information, at least for the commission, that we could then share with people in the public about what their intent is, as much as they're willing to share, that would be really fantastic. Because if there's anybody that's going to I guess, have a complaint about it, I want to make sure that as much information that we have on their intent is available and known before that happens.
Okay. They are currently continuing to do their own market analysis, and as they finish that work, that will dovetail with us finishing the dredging in the Whatcom Waterway, and the added depth is critical for them. And so their due diligence will finish at about the time we're finishing our dredging. And then anything that looks like there's some fruition to that would come back to the commission. We would work that through normal channels.
Have they shared with us what the product, what the products they're intending to either move through the terminal or produce at the in the area?
They have not. There's several different types of ways that biomass gets manufactured and shipped and moved. You can have essentially like ingots. You can have briquettes. You can have pellets. Hog fuel, so there's a number of different ways that it can get processed depending on the end user and how they want to fold it in.
Okay, great. Well, I didn't have any trouble with that conversation last year, and I think our conversation here at the commission was, yeah, go get them. My own particular position is that as far as I can tell, there are two extractive industries that humans engage in that are sustainable or could be potentially sustainable. One of them is forestry practices, and the other one is fishing. And everything else creates a massive change on the landscape, farming, you name it. It's sustainable in final practice, but forestry and fishing, I think, are the two extractive ones that we can do in a sustainable manner. And I think that's the concern that some folks have, that Decorum and BFM
correct
are interested in working in a sustainable manner here in Whatcom County. So I would definitely share that information with them, but if we have any more that we can make public, that would be fantastic.
And then just to clarify, typically when people like BFM, they are able to successfully market their product, it's a direct offset from coal. So it gets burned in an industrial facility, but it offsets coal in those operations.
All right, thanks, Dan.
And Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we just agree to 6 months with these folks to that we would not put a competitor on that property? We didn't agree with anything else.
Nope.
With them, did we?
That was it.
You were correct. So the commission agreed to an exclusive negotiating period with them for forest products. That exclusivity did not include any other materials, like Haskell's loading out some modules tomorrow. We continue to talk with other people about other uses at the terminal. So the exclusive was just on the forest products.
And how long was it? Refresh my memory. 6 months?
I think it runs through April.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Yep. All right, Mr. Briscoe. All right, Mr. Fix, any new business to share with us? All right, Tamara, Frank, anybody in the public, staff, anybody? You guys never have anything. That's crazy. Sometimes Rob does. All right, with that, I am going to call to a close our first meeting of the year, and happy 2016, everybody.